Hi everyone, my name is Eduardo, you can just call me Edu, and today we'll be discussing Ally Switch. With me I have some amazing guests. First we've got AuraRayquaza, say hi.
Hello.
Then we've got VinnyVGC.
How's it going?
We've got AkumaVGC.
Hello, chat.
We got duckpond.
Hello guys.
And we're also gonna have a Vinny later on. So, before we get started with all this discussion, I want to bring up a few very important topics. First of all, this might not seem very related, but very important aspect is that there are two main ways to see the game, and there's this analogy people make that I think fits really well. People say that Pokemon is a weird a hybrid between chess and poker, which is very interesting. In a very broad way, it is kind of checks out, but it mostly just takes different skills from both of them. And for example, you have the risk management that you see a lot of in poker. You have the whole mind games stuff. Is he bluffing? Is he not? You've got a bit of luck too, but you also have to be able to think many turns ahead. You need to be able to solve problems as quickly as possible, and it kind of has a lot of skills involved, and everyone has their different approach to these skills, right? You'll have players that will play very offensively and think that it's all about the prediction, and they try to get in their opponent's heads. Whereas other people will prefer to not even get into the mind games and just play the game as neutrally as possible, almost as if it was chess. Other players simply make a mix, and everyone has their approach. And in my opinion, Ally Switch heavily kind of tilts the game towards the prediction side, because there's not a lot of the chess component on the move itself. So as you can see, for those of you who don't know what Ally Switch does, watching the video, if it basically just makes Pokemon switch places. So if you target one slot, it turns out you're actually targeting the other, and this move is very tricky because it can either go amazingly as your opponent targets the wrong Pokemon, or they predict you and it's just a waste of a turn. It really is a double-edged sword, and it causes a lot of controversy, right? That's why we're here today. And I personally prefer to look at the game in a more chessy way. It's funny because sometimes on stream people will ask, will tell me that I made a great prediction or something, but sometimes I'm just making odds management in a way that with a slight bias towards certain plays based a little bit on prediction. But I'm never really making hard reads except for a few situations. And other players are the opposite, right? They might struggle a bit more on thinking too many turns ahead, or they might not appreciate that part of the game as much and just prefer to be on the opponent's head. Ally Switch, obviously, it's very rare for Ally Switch to have a mid ground. I think mid ground is kind of a cute word here. Because what I mean by mid ground is that it's a play that covers many plays, in the sense that you don't lose no matter what your opponent does, but you also don't automatically win. So it's not like a very proactive play, but it's just trying to play optimally and give yourself as many odds as possible. And I honestly, Ally Switch kind of doesn't allow that to happen. And I feel like that is a problem for people who play the game like I do. I think we're very easy on assuming everyone plays the game the same way we do. And, we find that others are insane for thinking that Ally Switch is healthy if we play more of a odds management and chessy play, let's call it. But on the other hand, people who play more aggressively will just tell you, hey, just read the Ally Switch. It's easy. If you read the Ally Switch, it's a useless move. So you gotta understand that people play it differently. I personally, understand the other side. but for my playstyle, it completely doesn't fit, and I find it, it's disheartening at times because I want to play the game in a way, and that move doesn't allow me to. So I don't think the move is intrinsically unhealthy. I just think that it is unhealthy for the type of playstyle that most top level players identify themselves with. Because I've also noticed, I don't know if it checks out with you guys too, but when you start playing, you see the game more as the reads-based kind of way, and as you progress and start to evolve, you start appreciating the other side of the game more, because it's not as obvious, and you need experience to really see it. That's what I found. Obviously, there are many top players who play offensively and play based on reads. Many of them have done extremely well at major events, and I'm not saying that only inexperienced players play offensively. It's not what I mean. I'm just saying that it's more unlikely for you to find inexperienced players who try to play like it's chess, because they don't even know that part of the game yet. So you'll often see that top players kind of don't like ally switch because it goes against their way of playing. But I don't agree with just saying it's straight up unhealthy, because it's unhealthy for you, not for everyone. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say for now. I've introduced some of the ideas that I felt like haven't been too explored, because I feel like everyone just says the game has to be played this way and you're bad for thinking otherwise, and vice from both sides. You see that from both sides a lot. And you never really establish the fact that there are different ways to play the game, and that ally switch is actually extremely healthy for people who prefer to play more aggressively, because it allows you to make the game even more towards prediction. You add a move that is purely based on prediction. That's like the best possible scenario for someone who plays like that. So in a way, it's extremely healthy for them, and for other players, extremely unhealthy. That's my opinion. So now let's hear our guests, see what they have to say. So AuraRayquaza, let's start with you. We know that you really like using ally switch, and you've used it a lot in the past. So tell us your experience and what do you think of it?
Okay, so yeah, I guess I'm of the opinion that ally switch is not nearly as big of a problem as it might be made out to be by many. I think going back to what you were saying about, there's not quite two separate ways to play the game, but there are different ways to play the game, and I guess I lie closer to the I want to play aggressively and I want to force the issue on the opponents, and I'm happy to make reads to do that. So I'm always a fan of using ally switch just because it helps the way I play. Sometimes I can appreciate where people are coming from with the fact that it can force 50-50s, and I appreciate myself having used it enough that it steals games that you have no business winning sometimes. But I think it's not quite to do with the move itself, and I think it's more to do with, not an issue with the format, but a product of the format and some of the Pokemon in it that make ally switch slightly worse than it probably, or make it seem worse than it probably is. I guess if I want to, I can go into example. During Series 5, for pretty much the whole of Series 5, I would use Sun, but I would lead with a ally switch Dustops and a Tyranitar, because they have perfect type synergy between them in terms of their super effective attacks. Like Dustops can eat most of the attacks that hit Tyranitar, and Tyranitar can eat most of the attacks that Dustops is weak to. And I would click it a lot. I would click ally switch a lot, and it was more like I'm saying, I was playing more aggressively and read based, and I wasn't using it to steal games from people. And I wasn't using it to cheese people out. It genuinely formed a part of my game plan of take as many turns as possible from the opponent before I have to max my Venusaur. But it's Pokemon like that, like Cresselia and like Dusclops and Porygon, which have these key immunities and resistances that can really make Ally Switch seem bad, because oftentimes you won't have a safe play. But in that same vein, sometimes you will just get caught off guard by it and there's nothing you can do. The way I see it is that when you get caught off guard by it, a lot of the time I just see it as another thing that you could have been caught off guard by, and I can bring up, like, let's say close combat Incineroar. It very rarely runs it, but then your Tyranitar will be out in front of one and get one shot. It's just something like that. Sometimes you will get caught off guard by an ally switch, and it happens, and I don't see that as a problem, basically. I guess that's summary of my thoughts.
Awesome, thank you very much. Before we move on to our next guest, I wanted to show a replay that AuraRayquaza shared with us.
Yes.
So this is a replay where Terran felt like it showed a lot of potential, like why Ally Switch can be so good and why it's
I think
successful.
it showed a bit of both ends of the arguments.
Absolutely.
Because
I'll switch sites real quick. All right. So let's actually go. All right. So the game started off very offensively. We have just a lot of damage just being traded. Diggersby just goes for a helping hand boost to Giga Impact. Does a lot of damage to Primarina. I guess the KO on Diggersby. So not a bad trade for Rayquaza. And we actually see the Chandelure coming in, going for a Dynamax, trying to get rid of Primarina while still taking a solid hit from Incineroar. I was just giving you a general approach or a general image of what was happening in the game. So we see Primarina trying to go for a double max card. Rayquaza playing it safe. Now it can just KO Primarina even if it protects. But it's not enough to KO Ferrothorn, obviously, because of rain. And you see a body press, especially with the defense boost, being able to get the Incineroar, which is a very clever play for a very clever setup for AuraRayquaza to get that double knockout. So now it's where it gets very interesting, right? We got to the end game. Chandelure technically beats both of these Pokemon, but we also see that rain is up, so you gotta be careful with. The Heat Wave's not going to do much. We also know from previous games, I believe, that the Ferrothorn is Assault Vest. And with a knockoff, it just, might just get the KO on Chandelure right here. So, AuraRayquaza has to be very careful with how he approaches the end game. So we see the Ferrothorn going for the Iron Defense, which gives it, it's a secondary check to the Ferrothorn, right? Because Chandelure goes down, Ferrothorn still gets the advantage, because it's not taking much from the opposing Ferrothorn. So yeah, here's where it starts, right? So here, Garaball gets rid of Chandelure. We actually see leftovers on Ferrothorn, so it's not actually Assault Vest, but in the rain, and it would have been able to take the Heat Wave, and a Nightshade plus a Garaball would have knocked it out. And we actually see that with Iron Defense, he gives himself another out. The thing is that now, the Ferrothorn is very low, so although you do get a lot of damage on Ferrothorn if you attack it, you get Iron Barb's Chip. The Nightshade is doing a lot of damage, and the body press is not quite KOing. So although you do have pressure, it's not quite enough for KO yet. As you can see, that the Ally Switch ends up being huge here, as it allows the Ferrothorn to survive and the Chandelure too, which gives both of them extra turns to attack. Ferrothorn actually is knocked out here, but he gets enough damage on Ferrothorn for Dusclops to pick it up. The thing is, it's still not amazing for Terran. Also, there were a lot of mind games with reversing Trick Room on both sides, because Chandelure obviously wants to be out of Trick Room. And there's always that to keep in mind. There's so many mind games going on here. So like this is basically for someone who wants to play offensively. This is amazing. This is just what do you want, right? It's a lot of scenarios where you can like use your skills of like predicting your opponent to really get an edge. But if you like to play more conservatively, it's gonna be harder. Inukami, thanks for the follow. Because there's no clear way to like cover everything, right? If you go back on turn, like in this position, how do you guarantee a KO on not right here? Turn after, sorry. How do you guarantee a KO, right? There's no real right answer, especially because there's always a potential switch to Dustclops. So, it's a very tricky board, and Ally Switch, there's also the surprise factor, because Shenlue does not run Ally Switch a lot. I don't know if we had seen Ally Switch on the site yet, but, it's also important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I guess, if I could, I guess just touch on the replay and why I guess I sent it, was, I think it was turn 5 when I set Trick Room. First of all, as you've mentioned, they're already mind games, and as, like I said, a player who likes to play on reads, I read him, the Dustclops set in Trick Room itself, and so I was looking to reverse it, and unfortunately it went wrong. And Ally Switch, it provided an out that I might not otherwise have had.
Exactly.
So I can see where the frustrations come from it, because as you saw, I clicked it 3 times in a row and I had to get all 3 turns correct to win the game.
Yeah.
If I got any turn wrong because the Ferrothorn had Gyrable, it was a loss for me. But on the other side of the coin, at the very least the first turn, as you said again, was the surprise factor, and oftentimes it is like where the whole it causes 50-50s thing comes in, is that, well, that's the case for a lot of the time after the first move, because the first time it happens, the ball is in the user's court because they know they have Ally Switch, the opponent doesn't, and from then on it almost becomes a 50-50, but the opponent can make plays sometimes to cover that. Obviously in this case it wasn't possible, and this is an example of where Ally Switch can steal games. But I think in a lot more instances than are shown, there are ways once the Ally Switch has been revealed to really try and cover your bases in some part, because it's important to remember that by the user clicking Ally Switch, one of their Pokemon isn't doing anything this turn. So you just have to try and not necessarily punish the Ally Switch, because it can be very, very hard to punish it, but just make sure that you are still furthering your game state and taking advantage of the fact that you have 2 Pokemon moving that turn while they essentially only have 1. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the replay.
Absolutely. I think it's very interesting that you actually had to, after losing that mind game, you had to get it 3 times in a row right. So it's not like he wasn't out of jail right away. He was still in the game, but he still had to get a lot of things right. And
it's just like playing the odds. And like I am happy getting reads wrong, as long as I'm getting more right than I am wrong. And Ally Switch helps that. It's that I got the Trick Room turn wrong. The first Ally Switch turn is whatever, I revealed Ally Switch. And then the next 2 after that were, I got them both right. So essentially I went 2 for 1 out of the last, the 3 turns where reads needed to be made. And that's just something that I can accept will sometimes happen. Sometimes I just won't get reads right. But as long as I'm getting more right than I am wrong, I will come out on top. more often than not.
For sure. So let's just finish watching the game. We see that Roxanne gets the read wrong, Rosov gets the Nightshade off, and now it's a bit too late, as the Nightshade, as you can see, doesn't even get the Shanglu from that range. Shadow Ball puts the Sclops in range for another Shadow Ball, and that's game. So yeah, I think this showcased this showcased why, how Ally Switch works. A lot of like its intricacies, and like how it can be handled. Here it was really hard to handle, and this is why it feels very overwhelming, especially to players who don't want to make too many predictions, right? But you also have to keep in mind that when you click Ally Switch, you're kind of not wasting, but using your turn to click that move, which means that Pokemon is not attacking. So that is kind of a way to play around it. It's not like amazing, but it's not like the broken in the sense that, like, imagine you did that and you still got to attack, right? But yeah, I think that's a great example. So now let's move on to Mao Jackson, if you're good to go.
Yo. Okay, so I'm a little bit more anti-Ally Switch. I think it's a pretty unhealthy move, but it's not as big of a problem as often made out to be. Like, I think that Ally Switch is rarely like a singular decider of the game. I don't think it's ever like much of a situation where it's like, nothing else happened in this game that could have been improved upon, and then Ally Switch was the only thing that decided it. But obviously that does happen occasionally. Most of the issue I have with it is like an issue with 2020, where like Ally Switch is really only like as toxic as it's made out to be in situations where there are extremely like offensive burst options. So like conflicting resistances, like Terran said, and there are a couple of situations like in Series 5 there's a pretty high ladder team with Clefairy Diggersby, and one of the premier like offensive threats in the format was Dragapult, and Dragapult could not safely click a stab max move with Ally Switch Clefairy. So Clefairy that can enable Diggersby like extremely well with the huge power max moves with Helping Hand, Follow Me. It also made Dragapult just scared to do anything but Airstream, because there is the option for Ally Switch on the table, and not only that, but there is the option for either to protect as well. So Pokemon like Clefairy and like Dusclops that like greatly enabled their partners with Helping Hand, Follow Me, Trick Room, they're going to benefit the most from running this. And it's like the main reason is because Clefairy can't, or like it's hard to ignore a Clefairy that can click Helping Hand max move, or a Dusclops that can click Trick Room or Helping Hand. So yeah, and then situations like the Paul Chua Twitter clip are probably much more common than Diggersby Clefairy, where he clicks Ally Switch to the Porygon 2, and the Dragapult goes for Phantasm into the Venusaur that now became Porygon 2. But we're in a situation where I don't see the Dragapult HP here, but it's a pretty safe option unless the Venusaur is threatening a KO on Dragapult to click Airstream Close Combat, because it's going to guarantee a kill into either the Porygon 2 or the Venusaur. So like if you're trying to prevent the Trick Room, Venusaur can't click Ally Switch. Porygon 2 doesn't run Protect usually. So like I think that there's like this is much more of a realistic scenario where there are areas like that covering for Ally Switch sucks, but it's like there are definitely areas for improvement in this specific situation. And not to mention, like, if you're talking about VGC in the context of like a tournament, it's unrealistic for you to like rely on Ally Switch and make it far in a tournament, because at the end of the day, literally just two options. It's click ally switch or don't click ally switch. And if most tournaments you're going to need to win over twice the amount that you lose, it's unrealistic for them to choose the right option to win every single game.
Yeah, very good point. See, I think you brought up something extremely important, right? Because in this format, where we have Dynamax, you have 3 turns of max moves. They're so strong and all. You know, and as we said before, when you're ally switching, one of your Pokemon is not attacking. So you need your other Pokemon to pull all of the work. You know, it has to be that one. And with Dynamax, that's very easy to do, especially when you get also like a booster or drop on your opponent out of attacking too. They're so strong, and yeah, it makes ally switch even stronger. Also, the fact that obviously the Pokemon that get ally switch tend to be extremely bulky, and yeah, those are extremely good points. So yeah, thanks for sharing. And now we're gonna move on to duckpond. And we've got a little example here too to follow. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so first of all, I wanted to, like, the first thing I want to say was that there's actually a big difference between the first ally switch and the second and third and all the turn after the first one. Because, like, especially on ladder or like best of 1 tournaments, best of 1, like the first match of a best of 3 or whatever, when you still don't know about the ally switch, like, it's very bold to just go for the like target the opposing mode, like not the one you're supposed to target, but like predict the ally switch if you don't know they have it. So like, especially on ladder, it's very easy to be like caught off guard by ally switch, because like as we saw in the poll through tweet, like, yeah, probably there was some mid-ground play, but not every Porygon runs ally switch. So in the eyes of the opponent, unless there's an ally switch which you might not want to predict in that situation, going for Phantom Cross Combat was a fine play. It wasn't just a fine play, it was actually a really good play, because they would get a lot of damage on Venusaur and probably kill the Porygon, and they would also cover every switch, like most switch in, because if anything wanted to switch in on the Porygon side, it would still take a -1 cross combat or a Phantom if the Venusaur wanted to switch up. So like, the first turn ally switch is the one that's probably more annoying because it catches you off guard. But there's also like the other turns where do you click ally switch or do you not click ally switch? Now that's where I believe the true 50-50 lies. Because if you know that your opponent has ally switch and they are in a situation where they might want to click it, because it's very important to like distinguish situation in which yes, your opponent might click in, but that's probably a bad move, and situation in which your opponent actually just want to click it, or not if they predicted you read the ally switch. So like, sometimes probably the best example is just with Dusclops and Rhyperior in Trick Room. If Dusclops has ally switch and there's like a water type, you might, like, that's a situation where you do want to click ally switch, you do want to save your Rhyperior. So there's a 50-50 there, but do I click ally switch or do I not click ally switch? Now that's where the problem of the move is. You cannot be like, the ally switch move does not guarantee you that you actually get something from the turn.
Just subscribed.
So I don't like especially those kind of situations. Like, if it's a best of 1, I don't know about the ally switch. I can just say like, yeah, I got caught off guard by a move that I didn't know my opponent had. That's fine. But then after that, it gets really annoying and frustrating, because every turn you have to predict if your opponent's going for ally switch or not. Like right now, this you're seeing my match versus David Kuchesh from Players Cup, and I had Dragapult Tyranitar, and this was game 2. It was open team shit. So like, my opponents knew about the ally switch. He knew I had it. I still hadn't used it the set, but I still he knew I had it. And turn 1, I just click ally switch, and the Venusaur targets my Dragapult. And that's like, I got a lot of value out of it, and my opponent had to predict whether I would go for ally switch or not, but also like whether my turn 1 play was, my game 1 play was maxing Dragapult and going for Airstream. So like, they had a lot of things to predict, and was just like, yeah, it's not a predict, it's just a guess. Like, they have to guess what I go for. and I happened to go for like ally switch, which really which gave me a huge advantage in the game. And then on the next turn, I don't go for ally switch, and like to me this looked like a kind of safe play, not going for ally switch. But from his perspective, he actually thought that I would go for ally switch anyway. So he once again targeted my Dragapult, and yeah, it picked up the KO on my Dragapult. But at the same time, he already lost 2 Pokemon. So like, just because of my turn 1 ally switch, I was able to fire off 2 max moves with Tyranitar. And was there actually anything my opponent could have done? There isn't a safe play on their side and on my side, especially for the turn 1, because I can't click ally switch, or I cannot click ally switch, and neither of them are safe, neither on my side or on my opponent's side. If I click ally switch and they target my my Tyranitar, I'm fine because Dragapult is taking the grass move, which is what I want. But I think the move is unhealthy because I'm not guaranteed to actually get something out of that turn. I'm not guaranteed, like on both sides, I'm not guaranteed to get something whether or not I go for ally switch or not, and whether I read it or not. While many other moves, like sometimes people say that follow me guarantees, sorry, forces 50-50, or protect also forces 50-50. But like, if I go for follow me, I guarantee that my partner is not getting targeted. If I go for protect, I guarantee that my Pokemon is not taking damage. If I go for ally switch, I don't guarantee anything. It's like, it's a coin toss every time, whether my opponent reads or not. Do they go for ally switch? Do they read the ally switch? Yes, I went for ally switch. I gained absolutely nothing. If I don't go for ally switch and they read it, I gain a lot because I can attack with both my Pokemon. And this leads to the issue of a turn where you click ally switch is a turn where you're not attacking. That's true. That's completely true. If right here I'm clicking ally switch Dragapult, so I'm not attacking with that Pokemon. But like I would say 90% of times, if I'm clicking ally switch with one Pokemon, I don't care about the damage that Pokemon would be doing. I just don't care about it. What I want to do is, like, I care way more about keeping my partner safe. So the turn wasted doesn't matter at all. Like, oh yeah, I didn't attack with Dragapult. It's not an issue. I don't care about it. All I wanted was to keep my Tyranitar safe, and I did that with ally switch.
Yeah, exactly. Again, going back to the point, or the fact that you know, with Dynamax and you know, bulky Pokemon getting ally switch, it definitely makes a big difference in the way it affects the overall course of games. Since, you know, you're not even like, especially Pokemon like Clefairy, Dusclops, Cresselia, they're not very strong, and if you ally switch with them, it's not like you were even gonna do anything else, right? So yeah, with Dynamax you can make up for the lack of offense from one slot by just, you know, being so strong on the other. So yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts, and now we're gonna move on to Akuma.
Yes, hello. I think a big problem with ally switch isn't a singular issue. I think it's more of like several issues that are compounding. So I wrote down a list of some of the problems that I've kind of gathered and just from my own thoughts. So priority is a big issue, as well as it's spammable. You can use it repeatedly in multiple turns. It works with Dynamax, even though it's not really in like a slot. Wide distribution has affected it quite a bit, this format, compared to previous ones. It doesn't have a lot of counterplay, because even moves like Taunt that would generally help against moves like this, because of the priority, it's not as efficient, and there's not like a safeguard really equivalent to it. And it's also very strong when it's revealed and not revealed, because whenever it's revealed, it's still a 50-50, but when it's not revealed, it's even worse for the playing against it. So I think all those issues combine, and I think that's what makes it so frustrating. Because even if a couple of these issues were fixed, it helps the frustration a lot. Because let's say you fix like the priority, they have to have turns to set up to get like a trick room up to be able to use it before they move. So it helps to where it's not like turn one I can just ally switch and then get a lot of advantage because I like the previous example how he just like O-code the Torkoal with the max rockfall and like wide distribution. So like the previous examples like follow me versus ally switch. I think something with like follow me, you know what Pokemon have it because it's such limited usage. Like there's like Togekiss and Clefairy, and that's essentially like the legal ones. But Ally Switch is on just so many Pokemon that like Rotom have it, Dragapult has it, I think Cinderace has it. So whenever you're playing against like common sets consistently, whenever you go against like a random Rotom with Ally Switch, it's really frustrating because it throws off the game. And I think just again, it's just all the issues are just compounding to make it just really frustrating. If it was like one problem, like Rock Slide flinches, it wouldn't be as bad because it's you can fix Rock Slide flinches by having like faster teams. That's part of like the balance of Pokemon. Like if you're building a really slow Trick Room based team and you don't have Trick Room up and you're getting flinched by multiple Rock Slides, you can fix that in team building. But there's not like a team building situation to ally switch, because especially in like a Dynamax format where even if you're using like heat waves and rock slides, they're doubling their HP, so you're not doing as much damage, and if you max, then it's single target again.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point that spread moves are really good at beating ally switch, but they're not very good at beating Dynamax. So yeah, that's also an extremely good point, and others very good as well. So thank you for sharing. So yeah, I don't know if the chat wants to share anything. We're just waiting on Vinny to join, and we'll share his opinion too. But yeah, we definitely got some good insight. A lot of points that I feel like are not being touched on in most platforms where this is being discussed. I don't see a lot of people just, again, it's the whole thing of like attacking and making, like they're trying to find out what side is correct, when I feel like it's mostly opinion based and there's no correct answer. But there are some facts, and there are a few things that you can say confidently, and the fact that Dynamax exists and Ally Switch is so widely distributed now definitely makes things definitely makes it hard. Definitely makes Ally Switch much stronger. So yeah, now we got Vinny here. Vinny, go ahead and tell us your truth. Tell us what you think of the Ally Switch move.
Hey everyone. Hey Edu. So yeah, sorry about that. I was a little late. So I basically have two different criticisms about Ally Switch, and one of them is directed, I would say, towards maybe the people that are defending Ally Switch, and then maybe for the players as well, for the people that are complaining against it. So first of all, just to get this out of the way, I personally do not like Ally Switch for reasons that have already been stated. For example, forcing unnecessary 50-50s, regardless if you know or don't know if your opponent has it. And, don't get me wrong, those are very valid concerns, but I also want to bring in another concern that may not have been brought up. When you have so many unnecessary 50-50s over the course of a game, is that fun to play against? Ask yourself, out of all the matches that you've played where your opponent used Ally Switch, were you having fun? Because I know I wasn't. So that's the first thing. I think moves like Ally Switch, kind of in a similar way to like Dark Void Smeargle in 2016, it takes the fun out of the game. And then my other issue, which I would say is the bigger issue that I had earlier today, was the way that some people chose to voice their frustration. So listen, at the end of the day, I agreed to play this game. You agreed to play this game. We all agreed to play the game, right? Ally Switch is a part of the game. So if someone uses it against me, hate the game, not the player. If you want to complain about the move and, whether we should ban it and stuff like that, okay, we can talk about that. But don't be angry because don't be angry at the player for using it, I can give you an example, for example, in my personal life. In 2016, I made a team that was built to counter regular Dark Void Smeargle, but it would auto lose to a Scarf Dark Void Smeargle. Now, I was hoping that I didn't face that in a best of 3, Swiss round tournament, but guess what? In my second to last round, I was unlucky enough to face it, and I didn't get angry at the player. At the end of the day, you do what you got to do to win, because we're playing to win, right? These are tournaments that offer, prize money and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, I will never berate the player for using it, because at the end of the day, they're playing to win, and you do what you got to do, So that's why I don't like that a lot of people on Twitter are kind of focusing their frustration sometimes on the players, and I don't think that's fair, So that's one thing. But then at the same time, I also want to remind the players that choose to use Ally Switch, listen, don't be surprised if people react in a really salty way, because just look at how people reacted to Paul Chua's tweet yesterday. Twitter exploded, So it's kind of like I can see both sides of the conversation. I see where both sides are coming from. So yeah, that's kind of like where I'm coming from.
All right, thank you so much for sharing. That was very insightful, and yeah, that's another extremely good point that we hadn't talked about. It's a very different thing to complain about the game and to complain about the player. We're all people. We're all playing this for our own reasons, to have fun mostly, and at the end of the day, as you said very well, we're all trying to win as well, and have fun. So everyone has their way to play, and we have to acknowledge that.
Exactly.
We can't impose our way of playing to other people the same way we don't like to get other people to tell us how to play the game. The same way you sometimes don't like people to tell you that Ally Switch is amazing. They also don't like to hear you saying that Ally Switch is extremely unhealthy. So
exactly.
It all comes down to how you approach the game, and for some people, the move will be extremely annoying. Because you don't like making those kind of 50-50 mind games. Some people love those. I little anecdote, when I faced a few Japanese players at Worlds, they had this thing where every time there was like a 50-50, a speed tie or some luck involved thing, they're very excited. They like put their hands together like they're praying, and they get extremely excited when they get it. So that's a positive way to look at it. Like some people will just be like, oh, not again, it's gonna come down to 50-50, it's out of my control. Others are just like, if I get it, I'm gonna be so happy. If I don't, it's too bad. So it's like, glass half full, glass half empty. And you can always look at things that way, right? And some people, look at the 50-50s like they love them. They just live for them. Swagger was used a lot in old days as kind of a way to improve the odds on your favor. Though that's kind of different because you're walking into odds management, and that's also a very interesting aspect, but different than what we're discussing here. Because Ally Switch is more about reading the opponent. But yeah, some people just love that, and it's the way they approach the game. And it kind of sucks maybe for you to have to face that when your playstyle clashes with it. But at the end of the day, we're all people. We gotta respect each other, and always keep that in mind. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to add.
Well, I think one of the things I wanted to highlight, just out of the other arguments about Ally Switch, is duckpond's point about clicking it versus clicking something else. I think that was is worth I don't know, further attention, because at the end of the day, if you're as the Ally Switch player, you'll clicking Ally Switch will at worst be net neutral, and clicking another move will at worst be net positive. Whereas the associated risk is completely different for the opponent. And I think another big issue with it is the accessibility. It's not only on a couple of different mons, but I think we all had a pretty varied stance. So I was pretty happy with what I heard.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Anyone else? If I can just say one thing is, I probably just said a bit about it earlier, but like ally switch became very prominent. Started became very prominent in 2018 because that's when it first was like widely spread to like many Pokemon. But the thing is, the issue about ally switch is the partner of the ally switch Pokemon. So like in 2018, we saw it usually only with Snorlax. Like there were some Snorlax Cresselia team with ally switch, and then in 2019 we saw a bunch of ally switch Pokemon, especially Shedinja, because it would have next to it like Groudon Xerneas mostly. Sometimes there was an Evoltar, but it was way rarer. And then now in 2019, where every Pokemon is like a restricted or something, because like every Pokemon can Dynamax, and so like usually when you ally switch, you have your Dynamax Pokemon next to it. So like that's a big issue, right? Like that's related to why ally switch became more and more of a problem with time. The fact that next to it there were always like huge Pokemon that you wanted to preserve more than the Pokemon that was actually clicking ally switch. Like that Pokemon was more disposable of.
Yeah, I think it's just as the formats I guess have got stronger. In the 2018, you had the one-time Z move that would nuke something, and so an ally switch would be nice to get away from that. And in 2019, you would have these massive like damage output like Xerneas, there are primals, Rayquaza, stuff like that. And in 2020, you have these free turns of, and usually almost always game-changing free turns of max moves. It's just ally switch gets continually better, and I think that, at least from the way I see it, is that it's not an issue with the move. It's all the issues with the move come from the format and stuff like its distribution, as people have said. Rather than the move itself, is the way I see it.
Yeah, exactly. I think ally switch is about as good as its partners, and like, if it's, it has to do with like how much mileage you'll get off of it, I guess, because it's going to be significantly less in a format like 2018, where the best you can get is a Z move, or in 2019 you can get a Geomancy, in 2020 you can get a Max move.
For sure. Also important to note, in 2018, you only really saw ally switch on very offensive teams. I didn't see like tech ally switch on bulky stuff, except for like a rare chalk. And usually you didn't see more balanced builds using ally switch, because you didn't gain much out of that. You saw it with Cresselia on like Mega Charizard Y teams, with Snorlax. Those kind of Pokemon, because you really need the partner to the ally to do all the work. So it has to be some extremely strong Pokemon. And for sure, it's only been a problem since 2018, because before it wasn't even widely distributed to begin with, and now we have all these threats. Extremely good points. Those are amazing to take away, and I think we made a lot of progress in this whole discussion, because it's very common to just be a bunch of people yelling at each other and trying to convince the others that they're right, and we don't actually see any progress. And I think we made really good progress here. Got anything else to say?
Edu, can I bring something up actually?
Yeah,
I think it was really interesting. Some of you have actually brought up something that I think is very important to the discussion. So as some of you said, ally switch didn't really start becoming prominent until it started to in 2018, and then it became a little more prominent in 2019 and became a lot more relevant because it would be paired up again, like you said, stuff like Xerneas, Rayquaza, and stuff like that. And now in 2020 plus now 2021, we can all Dynamax and hit really hard and KO stuff. So I think another problem with ally switch is just the fact that it's become much more prominent now and splashable now is the reason why a lot more people are complaining more often.
Yeah, I think 2020 was definitely like the perfect storm, because we got such an incredible boost in power with Dynamax, and we also got a very large distribution of the move. So I think it just, both of those together really made it a big problem this year. And something that I didn't mention before, I think another issue is that, like, whenever it's not revealed, like open team sheets is like a separate issue, but like when it's not revealed, I think another issue is like Dustclops. Like Dustclops uses Ally Switch pretty frequently, but it also has so many other good moves that just looking at a team, it's really hard to say what it's going to have, because it generally will have like Nightshade, Pain Split, Trick Room. You have like Haze that's like really strong with Horse. Edu's used with like Gravity before, with Other Horse, Mudsdale to hit flying types, and Rotoms with ground type moves. So it's really hard to just look at Pokemon like Cresselia or P2 or Dustclops and just so they have Ally Switch 100%, because a lot of the times it's not something that's going to be it's like Picolytics would have like the exact numbers, but I think on Clops it's probably around like 30% usage compared to like Haze or some other moves. So it's always interesting, because if it was like that was like the best move that it had, it didn't really have a varied move pool, it would make it a little easier because you could know ahead of time, or at least have a better idea that they're going to have it. But whenever you have something like Haze, like Haze is a really, really powerful move. Even now when Intimidate's not as strong, like it's still really, really good at protecting your partner. So that's like another factor that makes it a lot more difficult. I think that's more of like a ladder issue, because like best of threes, you determine that earlier, and then in the next game you can adapt. But I think that's also where like a lot of frustration is coming from initially is like laddering, because there's not a lot of events right now. Everyone's just laddering endlessly. So, you play against a lot of Ally Switch on random mons, or it's just unrevealed, and it's just frustrating. But, I think that's just something that will improve if like Dynamax becomes like there's a format where like Dynamax doesn't exist. I think Ally Switch would be better. I think it'll still be used, because I think objectively, like just switching the positions is still like a powerful effect. But I think the big issue is like having 3 turns, like 130 base power moves from a devil Pokemon.
I think something to, touch on there is actually completely unrelated to the whole Paul Chew clip, and this was a few days ago now. I was actually on Picolytics, and I happened to look at Cresselia, and funnily enough, Ally Switch is its 3rd most used move at 60% of Cresselia's, just an example. And so I think, and I've noticed it more, particularly in Series 7, interestingly, that I have found it, easier than before to understand when my opponent not necessarily has Ally Switch, but very reasonably could have it, and be able to appreciate that in the game. So, for example, Cresselia, and I think people should always assume it has Ally Switch, because not only do the stats show it, but it really doesn't have many better moves. And even stuff like Dustclops, it might be, I guess, tougher, at the start of the game to figure out, because it has more good moves, but oftentimes you can reason with yourself as to the moves they have. So, for example, it'll always have Trick Room, it'll always have Nightshade. There might be a Vinny, so it might not have Will-O-Wisp. There might not be a Glacier, or there might, or the Glacier you might be able to tell is Life Orb, in which case it could have Haze. Or you could, potentially see a weakness policy, in which case it shouldn't have Haze, and just things like that to maybe narrow down the options. And I think a lot of the time, outside of these niche Pokemon like Rotom, I think was mentioned earlier, it isn't so hard to figure out if Pokemon maybe have Ally Switch or not before it happens, and try and prepare for that. Because I guess, and I'll go back to Cresselia particularly, if you know, that's in quotation marks, that they have Ally Switch and they don't know that you know, then you're instantly, very far ahead, in that you can make more informed plays and they can just click Ally Switch. I guess I'm maybe not making much sense, but it's just like I found it easier to decipher from teams whether Pokemon could or maybe shouldn't have Ally Switch on those key fat Pokemon like Cresselia, Dusclops or Porygon.
Yeah, no, you're clear. Yeah, I definitely get that. Yeah, on Cresselia, it's especially obvious, I feel, because it doesn't get the same utility nowadays as it used to. Like, Skill Swap is much worse because it doesn't work on Dynamax. You don't, like, you could run screens maybe, but like there's Urshifu creating through and all that, so unless you, without Light Clay, it ends up not being worth it. It's just on Cresselia it makes a lot of sense to have Skill Swap, but you kind of expect it. It's just on Porygon 2 and Dusclops, it feels much harder to predict because there's so many moves they can have that honestly are guaranteed to give you something, right? Or Ally Switch is never guaranteed. Like, that's the thing. Ally Switch doesn't guarantee anything, so it's like it just makes the game more volatile. That's why players that don't like to rely too much on prediction really hate that move. And it's, again, since it's not guaranteed to gain you anything, sometimes you're better off just using something else, and that's why it's harder to predict on those Pokemon. But for sure, on Cresselia, I 100% agree that you should expect Ally Switch.
Yeah, I just want to point out that there was, like, in 2019, especially with if you saw a Shedinja, it was pretty much guaranteed to the Ally Switch. Like, that's I think the one case of a Pokemon that like 100% of the time that had Ally Switch, because there was really no better move than Ally Switch.
Absolutely.
Whenever 50, there was like, you could run Shadow Claw, but like it wasn't worth it. It was just run Ally Switch. It was way much better to run Ally Switch than any other move. So Shedinja was the one Pokemon on which you knew 100% that they had Ally Switch. Right now, even Cresselia doesn't always have it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to bring up another point, which is that there's also another factor that I brought up on my Dynamax video, which is that there's a lot to this game in terms of depth, right? We've seen, like, mathematically there are a lot of different outcomes that can come out of a game, and even at the very turn, like just one turn, there's so many outcomes that it's really a huge skill to be able to really analyze the actual risk reward for a turn. And the question is always, how much is too far? At what point are, like, the things we have to consider way too much? Like, if you restrict, like, let's imagine we're only looking at the 4 moves the Pokemon actually have, and it's like open information, everything, right? The number of possible outcomes is already huge, including like switching, protecting, targeting even your own ally, targeting both of your opponent's Pokemon. There are so many different outcomes that at what point does it become the point is, like, if you add the fact that you don't know their sets, right? It's already so much, but if you add the fact that you don't know their sets, you have to, like, assume that it has imagine Porygon, you have to assume it has Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Recover, Trick Room, Shadow Ball, Tri Attack, and Ally Switch. If you include all of those, it increases the amount of possible outcomes exponentially. It's insane. So, the question is, when is it too much? And I feel like the fact that Ally Switch is another move that by itself already has a lot of variance, but it's also, you also don't know if they have it, might push the game to another point where it's not possible to cover your options because there's just so much that can happen.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all that. I think generally, like, a lot of what Turan is saying is correct. I agree with a lot of his points. I think that there's just a couple, like, tweaks that could be made to it that make it, like, a lot less frustrating, like priority and spammability. I think if you, like, fix, like, those two things, like, make it to where, like, it doesn't have priority and it has, like, chances to, like, fail if, like, used in succession. I think that handles, like, so much frustration just with, like, 2 small changes that it doesn't even matter if a lot of different Pokemon can have it, because they can't just click it 3 turns or 4 turns in a row and just gain a lot of advantage from that.
I second that notion. At least nerf it in the same way that Dark Void was nerfed after 2016.
That's a
That
lot.
might be a little much. But
Yeah, no, Darkwood wasn't there. Darkwood was just killed.
yeah, that's not a move anymore.
Yeah, it's straight up more.
No, I mean that was literally killed because Smeargle cannot use it anymore, and like on top of that, it even had like lower accuracy. It was
Yeah.
completely not needed.
And
But
they
still,
added they added the terrain, the surge abilities.
Yeah,
too. They
that.
Yeah,
nerfed
poor
it so hard.
Darkrai, man.
And they added Stalwart for Duraludon.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I guess. But that's actually a good point. Like sometimes I see people, like when the Ally Switch discussion comes up, bring up Duraludon or like Barraskewda or Snapshot Inteleon, and yeah, that's fair. Like those Pokemon can ignore Ally Switch. That's true. That's 100% true. But like Inteleon is very situational. Barraskewda is just bad. Duraludon is, in my opinion, it's also really, really bad, but like, people think it's good. So like, I give them that it's like a decent Pokemon. But see, like I would be forced to run a mediocre Pokemon, like not a very good Pokemon, just to counter Ally Switch. That's like, I don't know. That's probably too much for me.
That's the same problem I had with Dark Void Smeargle in 2016.
Yeah. Let's also keep in mind that most of those Pokemon are characteristic of more offensive playstyles, and those are not the people that have problems with Ally Switch. So, it's
Very true.
it's not even a fix.
I think if like more Pokemon had access to abilities like Propeller Tail, or if there's even like an item that lets you like ignore redirection, I think that also helps because you can make sure your offensive threat, like your Dynamaxer and like the turn 1 scenario where like they turn 1 Ally Switch, there's like an item that can, I mean, it's like that could be less optimal because you might want like Life Orb, but at least there's like an option available in that sense that you can like, I don't know what the item would be, what it'd be called, but you know, it would give you an option to give like an offensive Pokemon, you know, to be able to like ignore like Follow Me, Rage Powder, etc.
Well, we used to have Spotlight. For those of you who don't know, it's a move that allows you to choose the target of a move. So basically, like if you, it's extremely situational and it's really, really hard to use. But basically, that move is like if I use Spotlight on a Pokemon, it basically can ignore Ally Switch from my ally. And even then in 18 and 19, you know, Ally Switch was pretty decent, and people were still usually using it. So I don't know if like, I mean, now I guess Ally Switch is much better. So maybe it would have been useful, but it's gone from the game anyway, so it doesn't.
It doesn't have good distribution. Like there's only Clefairy
you have
who gets like Clefairy is the only good Pokemon that gets it, I guess. Like the other one are Shiinotic and Lanturn, and I don't know, but like even then, like okay, that's probably a good turn move on Clefairy because right now we're seeing Clefairy with like Follow Me and Helping Hand and Protect, and then the last move can be like saying Ice Wind, Moonblast, whatever. And yeah, if Spotlight was still a thing, probably we would see it on Clefairy, but like that would be just one Pokemon on which we would see.
Exactly.
And Clefairy doesn't really fit every team. Like it's a very specific Pokemon. It's not splashable, so it's very hard to like just. Oh yeah, I'm running Clefairy because of Ally Switch. No, that doesn't work. I would be forced to run like a specific team in which Clefairy fits, which are not. It's not like there's not a bunch of teams, just a few where Clefairy fits. Just to like don't play the 50-50 because I could still play the 50-50 and probably like not probably, but I could win it and not even have the issue. So like I don't know how much Spotlight would be a fix.
Yeah, that's why I figured like an item would be more useful than like Spotlight as a move, because like if there's an item, because it even adds like an extra risk reward layer, because you would give up some like extra damage like Life Orb, but you would gain, you know, the ability to ignore redirection, which I mean that could have its own balance implications, but I mean there's so many different ways to adjust this mechanic, and I think that's definitely something that hopefully Game Freak will, you know, listen to the community and, you know, adjust that accordingly.
I think that's probably because, you know, I don't think Ally Switch is the perfect move. I think that's one of my biggest issues with the move, is that it's incredibly hard to prepare for outside of gameplay. So, you can say, you will never say, ever, I'm going to put Duraludon on my team to cover ally switch, because first of all, the move is not, it's obviously quite common. Well, I don't think it's nearly as common as it's made to seem, because obviously the examples where you get ally switched are the ones you remember most. But even then, it's not you don't see it in a big enough percentage of games for it to factor into your team building decisions, if that makes sense. You won't adjust your team building to cover for ally switch. You will get into a game and then you'll start to consider the ally switch, or you'll get into team preview and start to see, the Pokemon that could have ally switch, and then start to consider it. And if that was fixed, I think that would solve a lot of that would appease a lot of people that have issues with it, if you could prepare for it proactively rather than wait until you're in a scenario where ally switch could be clicked and then have to start thinking about what to do against it.
I agree a lot with that. I agree 100% with that. I think that's definitely something where an item would be helpful, because you have safety goggles to prevent sleep powder, spore, etc. And that's was used heavily this year with Incineroar, Arcanine, and there's Safeguard. Arcanine ran Safeguard a lot to help prevent status, but there's nothing really like that would equate and fix an ally switch issue. So I feel like if there was more proactive ways you could team build for that, then I think that would definitely help a lot of frustration, because right now there's nothing you can do. It's you just have to get in game and then just have to deal with it whenever you're playing against it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also something that could happen, which is they nerf, or they buff rather, a already existing item to make it also ignore ally switch. For example, zoom lens. It would make sense, right? Because the zoom lens allows you to focus on a Pokemon, so ignore ally switch.
Scope lens, they should adjust scope lens to ignore ally switch.
Please don't. Don't even say that.
Well, because there's already Razor Claw, so I don't think there's really a need to have multiple items that fulfill the same purpose. So you could repurpose scope lens to.
Oh no, just add it. Just add it on.
Scope lens goes from suboptimal to optimal.
If it's if you just make it completely remake the item, it's just as a new one. The name stays, but it's just a new item.
Yeah, but we go back to the whole point that it's not worth dedicating your whole team building or your whole team building decision to beating ally switch. Getting something else out of it would make it worth it, right? So that's why I said zoom lens, because it's not amazing, it's not a scope lens. It does have added bonus in the sense that you get the accuracy boost in very specific situations. So you get that, and you dodge ally switch, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, but what does dodging ally switch mean? So you get the same effect as start work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe wide lens. Zoom lens is kind of bad. Only if you move after.
I guess that's the point, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's supposed to add I guess it would be a good effect getting Stalwart as an item, because there's Follow Me as well and stuff, and
you
don't want to add it to an already useful item.
You would make it the thing is, nerfing having an item or something that ignores ally switch is really, really specific, because even from a calling point of view, it's weird. So the easiest fix would be just Stalwart, but that would also ignore redirection. So do we really want an item that gives some kind of boost? Do we really want zoom lens, which also ignores redirection and ignores ally switch? That's probably a bit too much. For the record, zoom lens also ignores Stalwart also ignores lightning rod and other drawing abilities. So if that's on an item as well, that might start to be a bit too much. Possibly, I don't know. It depends on who runs it. But
Oh yeah,
That
I
could be
definitely
too
wouldn't
much.
like to ignore lightning rod. Just like in general, like if you had an item that ignored lightning rod, that'd be kind of powerful. But think in general, like ignoring like follow me, rage powder, like ally switch. I mean, I don't know, because I feel like the game's programming they would have to probably change the programming, because like the only two like abilities that they have like that are like stalwart and propeller tail, and I'm assuming propeller tail works the same way and ignores
It
like
does.
lightning rod.
There's the same ability. Just different.
Yeah. So they might have to reprogram, because I think ignoring like lightning rod would be really powerful. But I think adding on to an item, I think zoom lens would be better than wide lens, because like imagine if you had like Venusaur that would ignore follow me, and then also have like an 80 plus, like 80% or more accurate powder. That'd be awful. So I think you might have to do zoom lens for that scenario. So like
If we had like an item like that, I probably would run it even on Pokemon that have like 4 100% accurate moves. Like there would be people who just run it, ignoring the accuracy thing. Just I'm ignoring redirection. Yeah, that's really. I just care about ignoring redirection. I don't care about the accuracy. Like people would run it for that.
I think it'd be a really format dependent item, but I think in certain formats it'd be really powerful. Like in a format like earlier, how Togekiss, Amoonguss, Clefairy were like on every single team. Like Edu's team had both Amoonguss and Togekiss. So I think in a format like that item would be like pretty powerful. But in like other formats where it's like you just have like right now, like Togekiss isn't like super amazing because of all the threats, and Amoonguss isn't like it's really powerful, but it's not on everything. You have to like balance within yourself. Like, is this worth it to have it here just to prevent like a rage powder or ally switch, or do I want like life orb? And I think it at least would give you like something to think about in team building, and give you like an option if you wanted to. And I think that's something that's really important that we just don't have right now.
I guess the last thing I'd just like to say before I'm done with all of my points is that maybe this is just me, and I'm sure there are people who think the complete opposite. But I remember the enjoyable points being mentioned, that ally switch is not enjoyable, but I don't know, I derive my fun from the game, and I don't think it's the case for everyone, but I think it is the case for people, is that there being uncertainty in this game is kind of what makes it fun, and it's what I guess makes it exciting. And maybe ally switch is too much, as Edu mentioned, and that is a matter of opinion. I think as to whether that level of uncertainty is an opinion, but I do think uncertainty in the game is a good thing, and stuff, I guess, going back to the item of like an item of ignoring redirection and stuff, and making things more guaranteed. I don't know, for me it is, I guess, more enjoyable when there aren't certain guarantees in the game. Like accurate and moves and inaccurate moves is a different matter, but
because that's not
I don't know.
in your control.
Yeah,
but
that's not in your
read
control.
Is.
Yeah, and I just think Pokemon is good because right at the start, Pokemon was, aligned to a mixture of chess and poker.
Yeah.
I think it is good that there is a mixture of both.
Yeah.
And I think it's what makes this game worthwhile. If this game was just like chess,
Just play chess.
you would just play chess, right? Exactly. There would be no point.
I agree on
so
that.
I think it's just, I guess the last thing I'd like to say, just the very last thing, is that to keep it in perspective, not necessarily ally switch as a move, but just keep the whole discussion in perspective. And what I mean by that is just to say, when you play, let's say you play 10 games on Showdown, and you play you play 5 and they go fine, it's just however it goes. And then the 6th one you get hit by ally switch. and you don't catch it off, and it's frustrating, of course, when you get caught off by a guard by an ally switch for everyone. And then you play another 2 games and it goes fine. You play the last game and you might get hit by an ally switch. So 2 out of 10 games, you've been hit by an ally switch, but it's only those 2 games that you remember because they stick in your mind the most as the ones that I guess evokes the most emotion. Frustration being the emotion, and then you come into arguments and it can sometimes cloud judgment as the ally switch is this ever-present, incredibly, uncompetitive, horrendous move, which, it might be. And there are definitely, the points are absolutely valid. It's just to remember that you only remember the bad games with ally switch. You don't remember the fact that there might be 10 or so other games in between that where there was no ally switch, and that it's not necessarily as common as, and it doesn't necessarily change games as much as it might seem, just because whenever the discussion comes up, it's because it has changed the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely had like a similar mindset surrounding the game for a while, and it's kind of the same situation where like people complain about hacks and they're like, this absurdly unlucky thing happened, or like, my Corviknight got crit at the end of the game and I lost, and it was like you look at these situations that are unfortunate for you in a like very isolated perspective, whereas like in reality your Corviknight might have clicked roost 6 times, and it's it's significantly more likely for you to be crit on the 7th or 8th attack it gets hit by. So like the game could have been decided by ally switch, or it could not have, but like it's difficult to gauge whether or not there are other factors in the game that contributed to it.
Yeah, I feel it there. Yeah, overall, like the takeaway they get from games, also has a big part on emotion, right? Because what you're going to retain usually, especially humans tend to focus a lot more on the negative. I know that I do, and it's very easy to just sometimes forget about maybe just as Turn said, like if you can get 8 amazing games, but those 2 are the ones dragging you down, and they'll be the ones making you think that the games were not worth it and that you didn't have fun, even though you were having a blast for those 8 games. So that is true, and it's always important to keep that in mind, and that's why you have to be as unbiased as possible when you want to discuss logically. And that's why, like, for example, as I said in the beginning, from my perspective of the game, I don't like ally switch, right? Because it's the way I like to play the game. But I recognize that it's not intrinsically unhealthy. It's unhealthy for my perspective, for the way I play, right? Or the way I want to play, but I can't impose that on other people. And in general, the move itself is not unhealthy. It can also, it can actually be considered extremely healthy. So, you have to be unbiased when you want to analyze things logically, and there's your opinion and the facts. And I feel like it's really important to not let some bad experiences twist your opinion on things too much.
I think it goes the other way as well. Just like on the other side of the argument, when you get people saying just read the ally switch, I can appreciate that's not a good argument sometimes. Yeah. Most of the time, in fact. But that follows the same logic in that, you might have those 8 games that were just normal. You might have the one game where you got pranked by the ally switch, and then you might have that last game where actually you read it. Turn 1, they went for ally switch and you just read it. Mm-hmm. And now it's in your mind, you've had this amazingly, this great experience of you being in your opponent's mind, and you've destroyed them because they've tried to ally switch, and you've just read it instantly and that can also cause problems when debating because you're going off your emotions almost.
Yeah, and it's your own experience too, and you're not considering other sides. Yeah, it's just, I never lost to Ally Switch because I always read it, so Ally Switch is bad. Yeah, that's not a good argument for sure. And yeah, very good.
Edu, could I add something?
Yeah, for sure.
So I wanted to actually sort of respond to something that AuraRayquaza said earlier that I thought was very, and I actually partially agree with it. When you mentioned how you see VGC is kind of like a 50% chance chess and 50% poker. I actually think that's a pretty accurate description. I think the issue with, just the way people are exploding on Twitter is that maybe they feel that this move Ally Switch, because it's become more prevalent in recent memory, and especially now that it's becoming very, you can expect it you never know when you're going to face it. So I think the part of the frustration that some people are having, not necessarily me, but others who are exploding on Twitter, is that maybe they feel that nowadays, ever since 2018, VGC has gradually become less chess and more poker. If you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the issue. They feel that maybe it's the game is no longer a game that they recognized before 2018, kind of a deal.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like Ally Switch, makes it more towards the mind game part, and not as much as the odds management and the chessy part. So yeah, that's definitely why people on one side of the spectrum feel like Ally Switch is unhealthy.
Just gentlemen's agreement to only play chalk mirrors from here on out.
Forget it.
That's it. I'm using Duraludon from now on.
Yeah, problem fixed. I guess, got anything else to say?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. I think we all make good arguments. I think a lot of us are in agreement on a lot of stuff. I feel like it was pretty constructive.
Right. So, thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure to have you. If you want to shout yourselves out or your some stuff you're working on, feel free to do it now.
I just think it's interesting being on this side of the stream. Normally, I'm hey, Pat, I made it. Yeah, that's all.
All right. So yeah, thank you for joining me, and I guess the video ends here. So yeah, if you guys want to leave, go ahead.
All right, thanks for having me on, bro.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting all of us. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks a lot, Edu. This was an awesome discussion. Hopefully, this enlightens some listeners.
Awesome. Yeah. Of course. All right, peace, guys.
Peace.
See ya.